Being human means we're all going to make mistakes at some point or other. We're all susceptible to making some quite basic errors which come about from the limitations of our humble human brain. And Human Factors is about why we're fallible, what we can do about it, how we can try and combat that essential fallibility. Human Factors began in the airline industry in America originally, back in the 1980s really, when they had a significant number of major crashes. A team funded by NASA started to look into what it was that made pilot error, and that's really the origin of Human Factors training.
Before our next programme, we're going over to the newsroom for a news flash from Michael Burke.
An airliner with 118 passengers on board has crashed on the M1 motorway in Leicestershire. It came down near Kegworth, just short of the East Midlands Airport. Eyewitnesses say it was coming into the airport with an engine on fire when it crashed into a motorway embankment.
Kegworth was a sentinel event, certainly in aviation terms, because as a result of Kegworth, the whole way we train pilots, the way we train cabin crew, and indeed the way we train air traffic controllers changed fundamentally. It was such a good learning point and such a public lesson in avoidable error. First of all, the flight was perfectly normal, Heathrow to Belfast. When they climbed up to their cruising altitude of about 30,000 feet, the left-hand engine started to break up, which caused a lot of vibration. But it wasn't actually a fire, so they didn't get the fire warning, which would have been a very clear indication of which one it was. And in the ensuing confusion, they shut down the wrong engine. The captain got on the PA and told everyone in the back cabin that they'd shut down the right engine, and of course there was nothing to worry about. But to those down the back, it was visibly obvious which engine was at fault, and it was the left engine. Now when the cabin crew at the front tried to tell him, he didn't listen, wouldn't listen, but equally they didn't know how to be assertive. And so both these things have now changed. Pilots are taught to listen to no matter who might be telling them that there's something that they might need to know, and equally cabin crew and others are taught now how to be assertive without being aggressive. So in other words, not to give up when you feel your information is really important, but to get your point across. Trainability go into organizations to help them to change their processes and their behaviors towards safety, increased safety, and by doing that they become more self-aware, more team-aware, and more situationally aware. It changes their leadership, it changes their communication, it changes their whole behavior. Trainability has been operating now for 12 years, originally in aviation. Since then, we've worked with nuclear power generation teams, we're in the emergency services, but primarily our focus now is in healthcare, with a major focus on operating theatre teams. We work anywhere that people work together. Trainability are also really interested in bringing the safety improvements that Human Factors training can do into child and adult safeguarding, for that matter. The Munro report that came out after the baby Peter Connolly scandal had erupted suggests the same things, that Human Factors training really would be essential as a way of protecting social workers as well as the children from potential failures, and helps to point out how these so-called obvious clues to things going wrong, actually they're not so obvious, and you need a real understanding of Human Factors issues in order to be able to identify them early and to intercept them.
My background as an athlete was in rowing, in GB rowing. I rowed in the GB team for a number of years. I've been involved in coaching a number of levels, right from beginners right up to senior internationals. I've coached at schools, universities, both in the UK and in South Africa, and I've ended up coaching the South Africa national team at the World Championship. Human Factors in sport is really about drawing the best out of the individual. At high level, you find that people have the physiology and the technical skill necessary to achieve success, but you see varying levels of performance at World Championships, generally due to how people manage themselves or don't manage themselves under pressure. What I'm able to do is notice the common strands between the training they have in the aviation industry and what happens in high-level sport, and how that really transfers to healthcare. So really what we're trying to get across is the importance of simple things like a short brief and a short debrief and how important that can be in terms of preventing things going wrong in that moment, but also future events, learning for future events. That's common with aviation. It's mandatory, it's part of standard practice. That's still not happening consistently in healthcare. Some teams are very good at it, some teams don't do it at all.
So what makes a difference between a high reliability team, a high performing team, rather than just a good performing team, is the fact that they will brief and discuss what should happen, but what could also go wrong and who would do what if it did. And then afterwards they debrief to capture those successes, those things that went right, as well as the things that maybe didn't go quite so well. And what that helps to do is make them safe by design, not by luck. In aviation, pilots, let's be frank, live and die by the use of the checklist, because we found that our memories are limited, and aircraft these days, even the simple ones which I only fly nowadays privately, they can still kill me if I forget something. And a checklist really is more than just a simple check. It's a focal point for the whole team. I think everyone should be paying attention, and I think anyone should be able to say, hang on a minute, we haven't done this quite right, or I'm not sure that we've checked this particular item properly. In the operating theatre situation, the checklist should be, and if it's used properly, will be an aid to increasing patient safety.
I was involved in helping to develop and launch the World Health Organization's surgical checklist. But as I've travelled around the UK over the last couple of years, I've asked people how it's going, people that I meet, and they'll usually say it's going very well. But some of them say, we are using the checklist, but the surgeons are very reluctant to participate. And I've heard several anecdotes in the last few months of surgeons who prefer to scrub up on their own because they regard participation in the checklist activity as childish and beneath them. And as we all know, the early impact of the checklist has been achieved because of a team working together, doing something which seems a routine, something that an airline pilot and a co-pilot would do every time they took off, even though they may have done it 1,000 times before, because just once in a while they will spot something that would have gone wrong if they hadn't been actively checking it.
If any of you in this room were to travel on a scheduled airliner tomorrow, your chances of being killed in an air crash would be around 1 in 10 million. If any of you were admitted to hospital in the UK, your risks of being killed in a healthcare environment would be 1 in 300. Very, very different ratio of risk.
The statistics speak for themselves. Aviation now is by far the safest form of travel in any kind, safer than rails, obviously safer than roads. But it's changed dramatically since human factors training was introduced, particularly post-Kegworth. Pilots now just accept human factors training. It's not questioned anymore. It's seen to be a vital part of aviation safety. And I think it's worked. What human factors training can do is effectively give you a new pair of spectacles to look at your own performance and look at the whole world. And as soon as you start to dig deep into what it is that's made us make errors, make mistakes, then you see things in a whole different light, and we can start to redesign the world, redesign our processes, redesign our behavior. One of the projects which I think has been overall given me the warmest feelings has been the neurosurgery in the northeast of England, where before we went in 5.5 years ago, they had a 1 in 300 wrong side rate for burr holes in neurosurgery. And now I'm delighted to say 5.5 years down the line, they've not had another single wrong side rate. And we didn't do it, but we showed the team how to do it, and they're the ones who've made the big improvement. But I suppose the icing on the cake was the phone call we received one day from a friend who's a consultant anaesthetist saying, "We saved a life today, Trevor." And I said, "Wow, what the heck was that?" And he said, "We nearly had another Elaine Bromley. We nearly had another failed intubation. I can't intubate, can't ventilate. But the team all worked together so well." And he said it was the nurses came up to me and said, "The training that you gave us made that difference, where we just functioned like a team today, like we've never done before, and we saved that man's life.